This Future Construct podcast episode is supported by Applied Software. Applied Software is on a mission to transform industry by empowering their clients and championing innovation with real-world expert consultants. So visit ASTI.com, it's ASTI.com, and please let them know that we here at Future Construct and BIM Designs sent you. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Future Construct podcast. I am your host, Amy Peck. We have a fantastic guest today, Sandra Benson, who is the brand new Global Head of Industry Transformation at Procore Technologies. Welcome, Sandra.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Nice to see you today.
So this is all brand new for you. You've just joined back in October, right?
Let's see. I joined in September. Yes.
Oh, September. Great. Okay. So it's just a few months in.
Mm-hmm.
So before we get there, this is a very high profile role. And your career has been spectacular. And I'd love to maybe have you share just what was your journey? How did you get here? How did you move into this, kind of construction business?
Okay. Yeah, it's been a very long and winding road, no pun intended. I never thought that I would be in construction technology, never really dawned on me. I started off in the engineering side of the business and years ago, and no one wanted to get involved on technology, but we were implementing something called an ERP. And at that point, no one knew what that was. No one wanted to do it. I was the new kid on the block. And so they dragged me into it. And I found it fascinating how we could begin to, and this was years ago, but it began to see technology and construction come together. Long story short, I got my MBA, went to work for a company called JD Edwards many years ago. And it was PeopleSoft and Oracle, all those kinds of things. And I had this idea that I wanted to see in front of my name. So I went to work for a company called Kentz, Kentz, which is it was about a $4 billion oil and gas contractor. And we were then acquired by SNC-Lavalin. So that was great. It was fun kind of being on the engineering side and then the technology side and then a customer side. And then I got this great call from AWS and, they offered me an amazing position and I really enjoyed being there for 2 years. And then I got this call about this board of directors for the National Institute of Building Sciences. And I really was surprised. I had no idea how that happened, but I interviewed and went through the background check and, was honored enough to be selected for that. It's somewhat of a conflict with a government board with Amazon. So I had to make the difficult decision on what was best. And it wasn't easy. But I really decided that this was a once in a lifetime opportunity and that I probably could find a job, somewhere. And I worked with Procore as a partner for years. I love their culture, their vision. They were the first cloud technology provider for construction. So it's just, everything's really come together in a really nice way.
So that, you touched on something that I think a lot of people struggle with, and it's ethics around their job and their role and really what their, ultimate goals are. And so I really, applaud you for making what is a hard decision to say, I'm going to actually work on pushing the industry forward because it isn't easy to make that kind of a change. So I think that's really exciting. And I'd love to talk a little bit more about, just what the focus is with the National Institute of Building Sciences and, and how that, is going to evolve over the next few years.
Okay. Well, if you don't know, first of all, I would encourage everyone to go to nibs.org and check it out and join. But the National Institute of Building Sciences was established in 1974, and it was founded and partially funded by the Senate. And essentially, the idea of that is to make sure that to bring public and private construction into basically to advise on best practices. And as that's evolved, obviously, technology has become a big part of that. The infrastructure bill obviously is a big topic of conversation. So we have lots of different committees. We do a lot of education. So it's really a great opportunity. We report back to the Senate. So
That's fantastic. And so, because of your deep experience in technology, what are some of the technologies, A, that you're excited about, but B, that the company should really be looking about? I know that you are extremely passionate about sustainability and either, building towards sustainability or being able to, change buildings, to be more sustainable. So what are some of the technologies that can enable companies to do that?
Yeah, I do. And I will say this, years ago, I mean, everyone always talked about, the climate and green energy and sustainability, but at least in my experience, frequently it was just a poster on the wall, like we really care or we recycle. But I don't think that's true anymore. I think it's actually, people are really putting their money where their mouth is. So you've seen these climate pledges that many organizations have signed, and I think there will continue to be many more. I think as it relates to construction, it's going to become interesting on how we track that. So if you think about like timber, even, where was the timber sourced from? Was it sourced in a sustainable way? So I think the idea of us accomplishing that and tracking it is fabulous. I don't know that many companies have really figured out how we're going to do that. And as an industry, I don't think we've really figured out how we're going to do it. I think we know we want to, and I think we are all putting in practice processes. But as far as actual tracking that back, I think that's going to be a challenge. And it's not a challenge, or it's not something that I have the solution for. But I do think it's something that's a big piece of conversation. So this whole concept of 6D, most people are still in the 3D or even some in the 2D world, and now we're kind of jumped over to 6D. I don't know anyone, I can't point to a company, either a construction or an owner that basically has this solved, but everyone is beginning to look towards it. So that's pretty exciting, I think.
Yeah, and let's talk a little bit about that kind of 3D, 4D, 5D, 6D, and how maybe people are even challenged with where they sit today. Give maybe just a quick kind of discussion of how you define this evolution. And I know we don't have the answers, but maybe a couple of ideas about how companies could even be thinking about it today.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think first of all, it's 2D is obviously where honestly, what's going on in a majority of construction sites out on the field is still drawings. Now, they may be on a tablet, but that isn't, that's still it's still fairly basic, right? And so, years ago, I guess 20 years ago, BIM, which at the time was Building Information Modeling, that came along, and that was in theory going to be the panacea. It was going to solve all the industry problems because there was only going to be one model, one source of the truth, and it would flow all the way from the beginning, all the way through the life cycle. That was a really great concept. We haven't really seen the full benefits of that. I think frequently what you see is the design, as in engineer, architect, they have a model. And for various reasons, which would take us a long conversation, frequently what the contractor is building, their model is similar, but not the same. And then by the time it gets to the owner is going off an even different model. As-built are still a challenge, and they have been for 30 years. So, so this concept of this one piece of source of truth going all the way through has not come to its full fruition. Now we're beginning to talk about really, is it really building information modeling, or is it building information modeling and management? And I'm really excited about the second piece. The model is obviously important, but the model, including all the data, right? That's what's really going to allow us to bring this forward. And of course, collaborative technology is incredibly important here. So for most people think with 3D that we have to go 3D, then 4, then 5, then 6. Not necessarily true. 3D, you add 4D, which is your schedule, incredibly powerful, right? 5D adds your cost. You can slide back and forth and see where you are. Those are really important, but 6D is where we actually bring in the sustainability. So for an owner, they may be wanting to get, they may need to go now from 3D to 6D without even putting 4 and 5 in.
Yeah, so I want to unpack that a little bit more, but we're going to take a little moment here and have a word with our sponsors, but we will be back momentarily. This episode of the Future Construct podcast is supported by the amazing team at Applied Software. They have solutions for any modern project. Applied Software is on a mission to transform industry by empowering their clients and being the champions of innovation with their real-world expert consultants. They have a comprehensive suite of solutions for AEC, MEP, and manufacturing, and they have a singular focus to help you achieve higher performance. They have software, training, support, consulting, and custom development. Applied Software has you absolutely covered for all of your workflow needs. And BIM Designs is proud to be a client and partner of Applied Software. So visit ASTI.com, that is ASTI.com, and please let them know that Future Construct and BIM Designs sent you. And we are back with Sandra Benson from Procore Technologies. So let's dive a little bit deeper in BIM with 2 M's. We're already having challenges having BIM really move through that building lifecycle management, but then adding the extra M. It seems like such an obvious choice to be able to have this kind of standard move through your entire building process and then be the source of truth, in an as-built environment. But so what is the challenge and why are we not seeing more adoption?
Well, one challenge is actually really simple in concept, but was not easy to implement. And this is part of why I'm at Procore and I'm excited to be here, is there was no platform. So the only real way to use that data in a meaningful, timely way, and timeliness is obviously incredibly important, is that all the participants need to be on the same platform. The owner, the subcontractor, the contractor, the engineer, so that everyone is actually, so it was a technology issue, right? As long as everyone was in data silos, there were always going to be delays. And that's how, I don't think there was ever an interest that we would do BIM and there would be breaks. I think it's lack of technology is really what kept that from happening. We are now past that. And so that's really exciting to see. But honestly, at this point, we actually in NIBS, there is so we have lots of committees, but one of the committees is the National Building Program. I think it is National Building Management. I may have the term wrong, but it's a committee and they just came out or just coming out with a draft report. And the question then is, should we require BIM on every project in the US? We don't right now. Should we? Is that a good thing? Is it not? What does that really mean? What is the definition? And it's been interesting just going through that process. Honestly, you get 5 people in a room and you talk about what is BIM, and you literally can come out with 6 different answers. So that's actually been another issue. So one is technology, and I think another is definition and agreement. And then the last piece really is contractual. And this is really interesting too, because an engineer, architect, frequently the way they're paid is 30, 60, 90% deliverables, right? So they have a timeline. They've got to get that deliverable to the contractor at 30% so that they can get paid. Now, whether or not that is actually truly 30% or not, and so the contractor's paid in a different way. So that's the other piece of this that no one really wants to talk about. So I would say there's probably 3 pieces. Technology, I guess we would call that legal to a large extent, and then just agreement on what that is.
Yeah, I think that your point about just the misunderstanding of even what the definition is it's true in around all of technology. I mean, there's been all of this talk now. Facebook just changed its name to Metaverse, and the Metaverse is now in this like super hype cycle. And, we talk about the same thing. It's like if you ask 10 people what the Metaverse is, you're going to get 30 answers because each of them has sort of 3 versions of what they think it is.
Right.
And I think in terms of what you're talking about, I think there's a place for blockchain technology and smart contracts,
Of course,
to come into play, to really start to define at the outset, what is that 30, 60, 90, and what will trigger that next payment.
mm-hmm.
But I'd like to also go back to the sustainability piece, because you did mention something that companies are making the pledge, and I agree with you. I think over the last probably 4 to 5 years, sustainability has moved from just this sort of marketing play, and that's what it was. It was really just like, oh, we have to jump on the bandwagon, we have to just call ourselves a sustainable company, but it wasn't really part of the company culture. And I think that has finally started to change. I don't think it's fully evolved yet, but you did mention the other problem is, yeah, it's great to say this and actually mean it, but how do we get there?
Right. Yes. And I think that, and I'll add just another thing to make it a slightly more complicated, I think, because we used to call that green energy or being green, and then sustainability. But if you look at the recent legislation, and not just in the US, this is not a US issue, it's a global issue. Climate change management is a real issue. And so sustainability now is almost part of a bigger issue, right, which is climate change management. So I think the big thing you have to do then is just start small. What is the data you can capture? What's the data you need to capture? It's really no different than anything else. What's the outcome? What do I need to, if I say I'm going to meet this goal, what is it I need to track, whether I'm on that goal or not? It's in a certain way, it's no different than a budget or a schedule. I think the challenge, though, is what components are in there. And where do we get that information in? Is that information easily accessible? So I think that all that's in progress, but there is no national or even international standard for that. And I expect that would be a ways off. But companies are now beginning to look at, how do we track it? Let's say it. We say we did it. Now, how do we prove we did it?
Perfect. Yeah. So, I mean, maybe there's the opportunity to kind of build this into BIM as a standard, so it's a little bit easier to track. To your point, I think that's a really smart answer. Now, and during our sponsor break, will you share your water glass with us?
Well, it's something really silly. So this is a champagne flute, and I'd love to say that it's 1:30 here on the East Coast and I'm drinking champagne already. The answer is I'm not, but I find that, and maybe this goes to sustainability of my body, I'm not really sure, but I struggle with really drinking enough water. And I know I should, but it just doesn't. So I've always thought, well, if I drank it out of a really pretty glass, maybe it would motivate me. So anyway, that's.
I love that. I love that you shared that, because during the break, it was like Sandra very delicately took a sip. And I thought, that's all right, champagne. She said, no, it's not champagne, it's really water. So I love that. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Now, if it's 5:30 and we're having this call,
Well, then I think, and then I think, it's all acceptable, Sandra. We do not judge here on the future construct.
Great.
But I think that's really smart, because I struggle with the same thing, and I end up having a big thing of water, but I never look at it because it's just in like a boring cup with a straw. So that's much more elegant.
Yeah.
So in speaking of elegant solutions, do you think that it just makes sense to work towards having, BIM, an aspect of BIM kind of carrying that, the data and the metrics, so that during that build phase, those sustainability metrics are really built into the BIM system. But again, then we have the sort of compliance piece of it.
Right. I do think that's the only logical place. just like, if there is a model, why wouldn't you bring schedule and cost information in? And why wouldn't you want that single source of the truth? Now that we have technology to allow us for everyone to collaborate on a single platform, right? But the other piece we had to think about are the already built assets, right? So then there's another fun conversation of digital twin versus operational twin versus a smart building, and that goes on and on. But I do think then, so if you've got to be able to take the digital to inform the physical, which I think is, we're seeing that, right? We're seeing the sensors and that kind of thing. We're also getting the data from the sensors. But I think the challenge is getting the sensors, or the data, if you will, from the the physical, to go back and inform maybe the next project or the next model. So to help us become better. And I don't think we're there either. So that's another piece. But it's on the other hand, it's a very challenging but that makes an interesting time to be in the business, right?
It does, and it's funny because, as we're talking about it, and of course it's easy for us to sit here talking about it, that, it does seem incredibly obvious that you would, kind of bake all of this into an application, because we have the technology to do that. The platform piece, as you mentioned, is being solved. And I think it is going to take, whether it's, the owners or the GCs, to demand that everybody, or maybe even the architects, to demand that everybody is on the same system.
Yeah.
And we have this challenge throughout technology. The interoperability challenge is real, and it's been part of even the hardware conversation, as well as the software conversation, for years. But I think we all recognize that, interoperability, it's, we have to get on that kind of, rising tide raises all boats mentality, that we will all be that much more successful if we bake in interoperability. And, we avoid having, ads for companies, but I think what you are doing at Procore is solving some of this problem. And so I'd love for you to just take a moment and share, how you're attacking this problem. And again, like, let's give some good advice to companies on, helping their process.
Okay, well, there's a lot of people at Procore, probably a lot more technical than I am, but there are a couple of things I will say. Our vision at Procore is basically to improve the lives of everyone involved in the built environment or in the construction industry. And so that, and with sustainability and urbanization and those kind of things, that's more than just the owner and the design firm and the contractor or the subcontractor. That could even be the tenants or the users, right? So it's a single, so that's, we really want to improve the lives of that. And how we do that is to get all the stakeholders on a single connected platform. So that's really how that works, because if you just try to continue to build product, applications have to exist. My phone has applications on it, right? But applications, there's no firm that's applications will always become obsolete at some point. It's just the way life is, and so you try to build what you can or what you think you need, but you also need other people on that same platform so you can pull those together seamlessly, right? So those old interfaces, those are just big holes. Data would go and then it hit a hole, and then it would go and it hit a hole. So that's probably an oversimplification, but that is that's the theory, right? That we're working with, and we're seeing really great results. And I think we're going to see more and more. I think the days, one thing I do think is different, that the sustainability and some of these things that are going to happen is, there are some firms, some owners that, basically will hire a design and construction team, and they just throw it over the fence. Like, okay, you guys go build it. And at the end of the project, we'll come back and we'll argue over whether or not you were on time or on budget, and we'll go through that. But at this point in time, I think we're at a point where the owner can no longer just do that. because the contractor or the designer can be involved in making sure the building is built to be able to be sustainable or to meet those goals. But it's the owner who's ultimately responsible, right, to make sure that it is. So I think that we're going to see more and more of that. If you look at the oil and gas and some of the large energy construction projects worldwide, you'll see the owners are very, very involved. And I think we're going to start to see that in lots of other kinds of construction as well. And I think that's actually a really positive thing.
Well, I'll tell you what I also think is a really positive thing is that you opened by saying our goal is to make the lives of everyone in this process better. And so I think any company, who is user-centric and really trying to kind of improve the human experience without trying to sound lofty,
right,
are really the ones who are positioned to win. And you see that over and over again. And that to me is one of the number one success metrics of any company. In some ways it's I'm not going to say it's easy to build solutions, but technology is technology, right? It's sort of a math problem and a coding problem. But if you don't have that end user in mind, it's very hard to build a successful company. So I was very heartened when you opened with that and that being your focus.
Yeah.
Well, and I can also hear, the passion in your voice for what you're doing. So it's really exciting. And I know you're going to be a tremendous success at Procore. And I think that they made a fantastic choice in bringing you on board. Then this is going to lead us to our last question, which is the question I ask everyone.
Okay.
Which is if you could, transport yourself 20, 25 years into the future, and you could have any product or service that would just make your life personally better or just make you happy, what would it be and what would it do?
Take a sip of my water. That's a really great question. It's not one I think about. Right, I should. I tend to think, 5 years or that kind of thing. But I was thinking about this as it relates to the holidays. I live on the 31st floor of a high rise in Buckhead in Atlanta. And it's a 2-bedroom and it fits me perfectly and it's exactly what I need. But my family's coming. So I would love the day where space utilization is really that easy, such that, and we're seeing this already in office buildings, but I mean, literally, and I don't know how it would happen. So this is, you asked just a vision, and the vision would be, I have my 2-bedroom, I love it, it's all I need, but, families coming, I'd like to be able to have more space, just dynamically, and then when I don't need it, I pull it back. I have no concept of how that would work.
That's okay.
Yeah, but I think it also applies like office buildings. There's many office buildings now that are fairly empty. More and more people are working from home. So how do you make dynamic use of that, right? So that may be more short. I think that's the shorter term, and I think some of the big REITs and things are thinking about that. But I take it more so user experience. For me as a user, I would love something like that. But I really don't know. That seems like the Jetson kind of thing, but who knows?
No, I love the Jetsons. I always wanted to have that, that kind of moving platform where I could just kind of put my arms out and then like my hair gets done and my makeup and I get like that. That would just make my life so much easier. So I'm right there with you. And so, this is how we get these ideas out there. So thank you for sharing that with us. Thank you for sharing your wonderful insights and your champagne flute and advice to stay hydrated. So I think we learned a lot today, and I thank you so much for joining us.
I appreciate the conversation. It's one of my favorite topics. I am incredibly passionate about this industry. So thank you.